don't allow society to fashion you into being who they want you to be or who they believe you should be. You are not a failure. I think that a lot of us want the success and we want it now. And as a result, we shouldn't be praying for success. We should be praying for patience because we are missing the mark. A lot of us don't understand the blessing when we even get them.
Hello and welcome to Journey to Fatherhood podcast. Again, I know it's been a while, but today we really wanted to pick things up with a great friend of mine, a former teammate, a brother through and through. His name is Romaine Lovell, and he's one of those people that I've seen from being a teammate, being a friend, seeing his growth as a man, getting married and having a wonderful son. And it's just amazing to have people like this come on board. He played in the same team as myself and Billy, if you remember the first season where Billy came on. And I just wanted to have this conversation where we're just going to chill and talk about the different areas in terms of manhood, husbandry, I think that's a word, husbandry and fatherhood. I'm just making up words now. But without further ado, I want to introduce you guys to my friend and my brother, Romaine Lovell. How you doing, man?
I'm great, man. First, let me start off by saying my accent is in no way close to Chinny's accent. So if at any point you don't understand me, Chinny, just slow me down or tell me to repeat it because it's been a while since I've been living over there and everything that I was breaking down before. I tend not to break down as much now. I go back to being comfortable and speaking how I usually speak. So if I need to slow down at any point, just let me know.
It's a great thing because at least this way they can listen to it 5 times if they don't understand it the first time. So we can get the views.
I agree. But yeah, it's a pleasure to be here with you, man. I really appreciate what you're doing. And I hope that in some way we can minister to the lives of people that are listening. Fathers, mothers, even children, sons and daughters. So I'm looking forward to it.
Appreciate that. First of all, let's just kind of break it down. Let's just talk about, so you guys, in the introduction, I talked about how we both used to play for the same team, Coventry University men's team. And I just wanted to kind of first go back to how it was back then. I'm interested to know how, because you came for your master's, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah, I did.
1 year master's program.
1 year master's program, that intense program that y'all be running over there.
Listen, that program, I definitely couldn't do it. That's why I decided, I'm done with school. As soon as I was done with undergrad, I was like, you know what, you guys can keep it. I'll do my certifications online. I said I was done. But now and then, work might require me to go back and do a sponsored program, but that's neither here nor there. But I wanted to kind of go on that topic. I'm interested to know because, remind me, how old were you then when you came to the UK?
I was 24 when I came to the UK, 25 when I left.
25 when you left. That's a very pivotal time. So how did the transition feel? I know it was only for 1 year, but how was that transition?
Well, interestingly enough, before I left here, I have a mother figure that told me if I go over there and I spend too long, then, you run the risk of your wife finding somebody else. So when she said wife finding somebody else, she was not my wife at the time. And she was jokingly saying it to say, the woman that you need to marry is here. So make sure that when you're finished, you come back to the woman that you need to marry. Don't spend longer than you need to. Don't go over there and stop. And, so it was one of those things to keep your head on. Go over there in a very rough and real way, which I appreciated. But say that to say that when I came over, I made sure that everything was done in the way that it was supposed to be done. I was able to get distinction in my master's because really and truly it's as much as you're meeting new friends and stuff over there, it's still a case where you're apart from the world that you're accustomed to. I can tell you that English life is a very, very different world to living in Barbados. So it's different all around. The weather is definitely different.
Definitely.
The people are definitely different. But I embrace the difference that came with living overseas. And I think in embracing it, it allowed me then to have a better experience all around. And we would talk, meaning myself and my girlfriend at the time, wife now, but we would talk on a daily basis. So it was an interesting time period, but honestly, it was a rewarding one that I I'm very happy with, and I wouldn't have changed for anything. I met some lovely people, man. Shout out to yourself, Billy, Constantine. I met some lovely
Constantine.
people, man.
Still
Yeah,
balling today.
that's my guy. Yeah,
Now, the reason why I asked that is because there are two things that happened. Not only was that a pivotal age in 24, 25, 20, you left at 25, but 24, you kind of know yourself. You kind of built an identity, what your values are. I'm sure what your
yeah,
principles are, how you operate. So my thing was, you kind of mentioned about the transition from from Barbados to stay to study for a year. The next question I have was in terms of when you came over here. I know it's a very broad question. What were your view of men in the UK in terms of how they operate compared to those in Barbados?
um, I felt like this might seem. I'm trying to find a
Gonna
way
say
to
something
steer this.
problematic.
Yeah, this might be a bit problematic because you see my perception of things when I went to the UK, it it seemed bland to me.
Okay.
Bland in the sense that in Barbados we're filled with color. Our houses are many different colors.
Mm,
Um, our world is colored differently. It's
yeah.
not to say that England is without color. It's just being from a Caribbean island, what I'm accustomed to in the food, and
I knew you were gonna
and
mention food.
being, yeah, of course. I heard you mentioned food. So in food and the way that people react,
Mm,
I would say that we are a lot more friendly at first in Barbados. We greet each other on the street with a good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's the way you were raised. So like you
yeah.
can't pass someone on the street, whether you know them or not. Well, at least in years gone by, and just not say anything that would be considered rude.
Yeah.
But I think that was like the norm over there. So regardless of age, I would say good morning sometimes, and it's almost like a good
You
morning.
talk.
Almost like people are shocked that there's like a good morning. Like, sorry, who are you? Do I know you? And um, so that's one area. Another thing is, as I said, it feels like um, over there, for instance, I'm used to seeing many properties within the same color. So that was literally
You
different
were
to me.
not impressed.
That brick color, yeah, it's like everybody like paint does not sell for the outside of houses. That's what struck me when I first got there. It is just first impression. Obviously, it changed over time,
Yeah.
uh, to some extent. But yeah, it was different. But as I said before, it's a case where you embrace the difference, and
Mm,
honestly, it was an enjoyable time all around. Um, Even though people are not directly, you know, hi, my name is, or good morning, good evening, unless it's a setting which requires such.
yeah.
I found that the English people are actually very nice people, and I really enjoyed spending time with them. I went to about one, two, three, about four churches while I was there. Three of them consistently. So I was able to meet a number of people from churches there as well, and I can say that they definitely welcome you with open arms, man. They're in that community setting and stuff. It's a really enjoyable time. So when I experience people and men over there, that is all that I can really relate to. The men over there and how they um treat others, whether it's a new person or whether it's a person that they're familiar with in the right setting. I believe that it was a very warming experience, I would say.
Okay. I like how you're really trying to pick your words right now. Trying to be very
Yeah.
nice. Trying to be very nice.
Plus, I'm trying to think about how I'm speaking so that it'll be
I
understandable at the
know,
same
even from your facial expression, it's like a lot of thoughts going into this. Don't worry, we'll use a we'll use a transcriber if they can't understand. But
Yeah. No problem.
one thing I wanted to also ask is this: so you came over here to study,
Yeah.
and from what you said already, you were in a long distance relationship before we,
Yeah.
and that's interesting because I didn't know you were in a relationship when you came over all through that
Yeah.
year. So after you went home, after you went back and started posting pictures, I thought that was when you got into the relationship. Then
Oh, I see.
later got married. I had no idea. but I guess it's not something you go around telling everyone. So,
Well, I I would definitely say, but it's not that I wore something on my chest or a wedding band at
mm.
the time that said, I'm in a relationship.
Oh no,
But
no, you
if
were a very straight guy. You had your very had a very noble personality and things like that. But I think for me, it's interesting how you said it, and I know your mother figure. You said that you better make sure you come back on time.
yep, don't
There's a few
spend longer
questions
than you
to
need
that.
to. Yeah.
We're gonna go there. Yes. So when you were, so how many years were you in a relationship before you came to the UK?
Okay, so I got in that relationship in 2011, January 2011.
Okay.
Um, so I was in that relationship for 4 years before I came to the UK. And
So
then
2015.
um, 4 years? No, 3 years before I came to the UK. And
Okay.
then that would be in my going into my fourth year in that relationship while I was in the UK.
Mm,
Then when I came back, I always had the mentality that I was coming back to marry the person that I was in the relationship with.
I
So
see.
when I came back, I was prepared for it because I would have saved up a bunch of money and
Mm,
I went and I had an idea of how I wanted the ring to look. So I was able to go and get them to. Well, I got my best friend at the time to just draw what it would look like, and I
yeah.
actually was able to take that drawing to them and have them give me mock-ups of what it would look like. So we really customized the ring. I wanted bows in it because she likes bows. I wanted sapphire because I thought it worked well with white gold. I wanted diamonds. Like so, I put all the components of what I thought she would like into the ring, and I got them to build it. Of course, when they gave me back the first quotation, I told them, okay, so we taking out half these guys. Because yeah, nine working.
I was
Nine working. Nah, so you see that when you go in there, like, all those coming out. And then yeah, we can work from there. So that's primarily how it went. But then we were able to settle on something that I thought could work. And I came back prepared. Came back
yeah.
prepared to definitely do that.
I love your honesty, man. I love your honesty because
Yeah, I mean, but we actually, I shameless plug at this point because my wife and I we started a online ministry a few years ago as well. After our after our marriage, a year after our marriage, and it's called Lovell Lifestyle. So I think our Instagram name is at Lovell Set You Free, Lovell Set You Free,
I'll put that
because
down as
Lovell
well.
is our last name, yeah. So Lovell Set You Free, and on our YouTube page, we would have had the proposal of how the proposal was done
Oh,
because
you
I
recorded
had
it.
also done it
Nice.
in a creative way. It was called The Perfect Surprise on YouTube. So if you wanted to see it, you can see it there as well.
I'll definitely put the handle on the description when we're done.
Sure.
Now, I don't know because I guess it's a different dynamic in a way because you always knew you were gonna go back. So my
Yeah.
question is then, I know we're really focused on the relationship part because me, I need them tips. We all need them tips.
Yeah.
Um, whilst you were abroad studying, how did you maintain that long distance? I know you said you were talking every day, but how were you able to stay keyed in to still just building that relationship properly? Because in this day and time, people are struggling with the long distance. And I
Mhm.
know a lot of my friends, male and female, that say they can't do long distance because they don't
Yeah.
see it working out in the long run, or they don't. Yeah, I'm interested to hear. How did you work on that?
Yeah. So for me, well, two things come into play here. First and foremost, I definitely have a commitment that is beyond my wife or girlfriend at the time, and that's a commitment to God. And
Mm,
in that commitment with God, I know where I stand. I'm not saying that every Christian should be able to do a long distance relationship, but I'm saying that it worked for me in my commitment with God and my walk with Christ. It
yeah,
allowed me to know that at the end of the day, this is the plan that I have for my life, and I am fairly good at setting plans for my life and trying my best to follow them. I'm not going to say that they always work out, but trying my best to follow them.
mm,
And I believe that remaining committed to God and keeping that constant communication because the channels of communication have to remain open at all times. So giving that constant communication with her on a daily basis definitely helped. Secondly, mine came with a time stamp. So while people say, it's difficult for long distance relationships, which I fully understand, I was going under the understanding that, as my mother figure said, you
Mm.
know, you have a
Wise
timeline.
woman.
So come back by X time. So I
Yeah.
was working towards making sure that whatever I do, I am
Mm.
able to finish by this time so that I can come back by this time so
Yeah.
that I can marry my girlfriend at the time, who is
Mm.
now my wife. So I think it's difficult for some people because they don't have a timeline.
That's
Some people have longer timelines as well. Some people are studying for like 3, 4, 5 years, etc. So as a result, it's more difficult for them because they're further apart for a longer period of time, which puts a whole different spin on it. Makes it a lot more difficult. But for me, it wasn't as difficult because, as I said, we communicated constantly, and I maintained that relationship not only with her but my relationship with Christ at the time. And honestly, it worked. It was like you were working towards a goal, and that's essentially what I saw it as.
I think a lot of people listen to this will be like, I want to know more about this guy, how he was able to maintain all of that. So this brings me to the next curve because we're still going to come back to the relationship because that's a big part.
Sure.
And I want us to kind of dive down into because everything built up, like I said, at 24, 25, you kind of had your values built up, your principles and identity. So let's go back to that. Who is Romaine Lovell?
Ah, Romaine. Romaine. Who is Romaine? This is always an interesting question. Like the more I ask myself this question and I ask others this question and people ask me this question,
Yeah.
it doesn't ever get easier. It's not something
No,
that I would
it's
like
not
to
meant to. It
rehearse.
changes every day,
So
doesn't it?
yeah, it's not something that I would like to rehearse because honestly, it could change at any given time. And if it's not changing, then that is saying a lot more about who Remain is than anything else. So for me, I would say right now, Remain is an ambitious person. Remain is an ambitious person who is passionate and passionate about various things, passionate about Christ, passionate about family, passionate about his career, investing, um, passionate about building new relationships, and passionate about being the best version of himself. And I know that sounds cliche, but I think oftentimes, even though it sounds cliche, that many of us take it for granted. So I'm very passionate about how I can improve and assist others in their walk, in their life, and anything that I can do to help. To be honest, I'm more than willing to help as long as it doesn't compromise any of my values or anything.
Absolutely.
But I would say, in a nutshell, Remain is a very ambitious and passionate man of God. That is me stuffing Remain into a box that is a very broad box.
Going back on that, like you said, the definition of who you are changes over time because it shows growth and also shows new discovery of self. Now let's take it back to who Romaine was at the age of 11, 12. Because I know back home, people mature faster or differently. People mature
Yeah.
differently. And I'm interested to know because your experience when you came to the UK was at the age of 24. I came to the UK when I was 11. So for
Mm,
me, I wasn't born and raised in the UK. I came to the UK at the age of 11. So
yeah.
trust me, I understand the bland food thing, but not to say that, we've got variety now. I
You
wanted you
just
to
made a whole
mention
set
that.
of English people mad, boy. I was careful not to say bland food that I was served in the
Listen,
UK.
listen, we've got variety now. That's all I could say. There's, listen,
Actually,
I need to be careful.
not to cross you, right? But I actually remembered a situation. Now you said that where, so I was upstairs in the hub, right?
Yeah,
This is like one of
please.
my first experiences eating in the UK in the first week, and they were like, "Okay, you can pay for your meal here, and then you go down and just
I know where this is
collect what
going.
it is." So I paid for two starches and a meat, right? The two starches they gave me, I kid you not, with my fish or chicken. I can't remember what it was. The two starches they gave me was mashed potatoes and and chips. Uh, y'all call them chips over there. fries. I can't remember now.
Chips. We call it chips as well.
Chips. So
Yeah.
mashed potatoes and chips. And I remember I looked at the lady and I was like, you, you know both of these are potato, right? like you it's I'm in the line, like it's not just me, right? Like y'all know both of these are potato. Like I just paid for two starches. Anyhow, yeah, sorry to cross you, man. But it was just that was a real change in the way that I experience food and the way that the English have food as well. Yeah.
It's the way you just keep referring to it, starches. That's the
Yeah.
official name, but like
Yeah.
chips and mashed potato, they're the same.
Like, it's like both are
They're both
potatoes.
potatoes.
But no one told you this. Like, hey, what is happening?
Oh, okay, okay. Coming back. Listen, you got me
Yeah.
laughing when that my cheeks are hurting. But the reason why I asked that is because for me there was a lot of culture shift when I came, and I know you mentioned it briefly. What I also want to understand is in terms of at that time when I came, I was so impressionable. Like anyone, I was easily influenced back then. When I came, my English was, I could speak English, but my accent was far
See,
from the British accent that it sort of
yeah,
is now. And back then, I know what I went through in terms of trying to understand. Okay, who do I try to be like? How am I gonna be? Who's gonna influence me? Who do I talk to? How do I present myself? Who is Chinedum here?
yeah.
I'm interested to know back when you were growing up in Barbados at around the age of 11 as well. What was your life like? Talk me through 11 to 16.
I feel like through my younger teenage years, my life was very impressionable.
Mm.
Um, it's funny because I was actually thinking about this morning,
Oh yeah.
and it was even nothing to do with with what I thought that would have been asked here. But I was thinking about it this morning because I felt like there are certain things in my life that even though I wouldn't want to attribute um, any form of glory to any one individual or um, one experience, I do think that those things had a great and a significant impression and impact on my life and how I would have moved at that point in time. So things would happen with friends, experiences that you would have had with friends, things that you would have heard them say to their parents,
Yeah.
and you try saying it to yours, but I
Hmm.
don't know, it don't
You know
really
what
work out
happened?
the same way. It's a completely different result.
Absolutely.
Shout out to you, mom. So yeah, I feel like we sorry, not we, myself. Growing up in Barbados, I was fairly impressionable, and as a result, I I made I don't know choices or decisions that you'll look back on and you would. It's not that you don't regret them because you do, but things that have fashioned you to become the person that you are now. So trying to think of an example of growing up,
Okay.
things that I would have experienced that would have changed my outlook somewhat. Nothing immediately comes back to mind, but I remember actually, yeah. So in secondary school, the way that I was in secondary school, because that's my secondary school life that you're referring to, and the way that I was in secondary school, my focus was not there. I was fairly lawless. I remember doing fairly lawless things.
Hmm. The way you're saying lawless, you definitely don't want to reveal it. Okay.
No, it's so I had a nickname at the time. They used to call me Wigs, and that was because
Let me write this one
the
down. Boy, come on, tell me.
yeah, exposing myself. No, that was because of the song that Ludacris has or had at the time. Stop, drop, kaboom. Some call me Ludacris, some call me Mr. Wiggles. So it actually came from Mr. Wiggles, and then it just was shortened into Wigs. And
Man like wigs.
some of my
Okay.
friends still call me Wigs today, but a few of them knew it as Mr. Wiggles. And I remember Mr. Wiggles was in a very bold font to the back of classrooms, right across the wall. So it was a lot of graffiti one.
Wow.
I
Okay.
remember walking in a class one day and I kicked the door and the whole thing came down. It was just lawlessness, breaking lights, doing lawless stuff. I always was respectful, but looking back on it, it was it was extremely lawless stuff. So schoolwork was not a top priority for me at all. Actually, at one point, well, I stopped down. So I repeated we call it stop down, but repeat a form. I'm not sure if y'all repeat
Yeah,
forms
we
if you don't,
repeat if you
right?
failed a
So I repeated the
repeat the
form
same year.
in secondary school. Um, I I remember getting my report and all these red marks all through it. I remember I got a zero at a in a subject for end of term, and it's
Right.
like now I look back at it like, what were you doing in class, though, Romaine? Like, what was school to you? It was. I remember being sent to a school with solely, I don't want to call them delinquent, but children that were not concentrating on schoolwork.
You're a
I was
very
sent.
nice guy,
Yeah,
Romaine.
yeah, yeah. I was sent to this camp with all these children that were just lawless as well,
Yeah.
and I came close to being kicked out of that.
That close. Oh
I
wow.
Yeah, we had some interesting experiences there and encounters, but I don't want to paint a negative image of me, at least past me, to the point where people can't see past that, because
Mm,
that's not who I am. As I said, we continue to change, yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, we sorry, I keep saying we, but I definitely had some experiences when I was young, in repeating the form and doing the lawlessness, and that showed that I was fairly impressionable and is really not um, the person that God had me to become.
Mm,
And that transition started to take place only after my secondary school days. So I was able to get out of secondary school with a few what we would call CXCs or certificates, and I was able to use those to get into college. We only have one actual college here on island,
oh wow.
so I was
Okay.
able to use those to get into college. We have tertiary level institutions, but only one is technically a college. We have secondary schools that have an additional form that make up sixth form that you can go to as well. But so yeah, I went to the college. I did accounts and law at associate degree level.
Okay.
I
Okay.
took a year longer than I was supposed to, because I was still breaking out of that transition period of full lawlessness and not concentrating on work, to the point where I started to think about it a little bit. And in that those college years, I did an extra year because I would have failed some of the subjects there as well.
Right.
So then
Okay.
I was able to get my associate degree after that. That allowed me to enter the university that we have here. We only have one university here as well, and
In the
I
island.
was able to
Okay.
enter the university. Yeah, the university here on the island, and and I think that's where things change, because that's where my wife came into the picture. So
Also, you met her when you were in university back in
yeah,
Barbados.
I think it was that period that I was going into university. So right before I entered the university, and she also would have gone to the university. Now she's younger than I am, but because of the 2 year difference, being that I would have repeated the form in secondary school, which is 1 year
Yeah.
additional, and then I would have repeated another year at community
College.
college.
Yeah.
Then because of that 2 year, then we went into the university at the same time. But she had started going to the church that I attend. So as a result, the we went into university at the same time. And honestly, I would give her roses. It was definitely um, her influence and impact upon my life that caused me to change. And you know, a lot of men would out there would say a woman can't change me, but I think that y'all might be thinking that a woman is trying to change you for the worse. This lady changed me for the better,
Mm.
because after I got into university, um, and I realized, how smart she actually was, because she was extremely good um, in her studies and stuff. So after I realized how smart she actually was, it made me, I didn't want to be the dumb one at the back trying to keep up. So I started to get a little more studious.
Mm.
Started going to the library and to the IT rooms a bit more because she was going to the library and the IT rooms.
That's a positive influence right
So,
there.
it had a positive impact there. And
Mm,
as a result, I was able then to get out of university with honors, which
congrats,
is,
bro.
yeah, it was commendable because I needed the honors in order to get into Coventry University. So I
Was that
just
a scholarship?
started this. No, I didn't get a scholarship, but
Okay.
the way that at least Coventry has it for us, in
Requirements.
order for me to get into Coventry to do the masters, um, I have to have honors. I had to have work experience. I had to have a number of things actually in order to get into Coventry, which was extremely shocking when I got there. And I realized some people from other countries didn't have
Well,
to have.
listen, we're back to being nice. Things are back to being nice now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So essentially, it was my wife's influence that changed the remain of, well, at least from a, actually in many ways,
Mm.
from what I was in secondary school as that young impressionable guy, still being impressionable because clearly I was influenced by my wife that had an impact on me,
Positively,
but in
yeah.
a positive light, thankfully. And I was able to then use that to propel me to think differently.
Like that. What I want to know now is that in terms of, because we're gonna get to, I want us to, the reason why I'm doing this is I'm taking it from stage. We started by talking about obviously how we met, Coventry, and your experience. Now we talked about your formative, your early years in terms of 11 to about 16 or so, secondary school life, and now kind of transition into university. I want to know in terms of all through this time, was your father around, or what was the relationship with your father throughout this time?
My father was around in, yeah, in my secondary school life, my community college and university life, definitely still around today.
Mm,
So he doesn't live with me. So um, in secondary school, he went through the same emotions as my mom did, trying to get me to understand the value of education and
yeah.
the importance of discipline and learning and that sort of stuff. Um, I wouldn't say it was to no avail, but to little. And I commend them for it, especially my mom, for all the stuff that she would have done to really try to help me to get on that path of doing what is necessary to be a better individual all around, whether it be spiritually, physically. At that time, my father wasn't as I don't want to use the word spiritual, but as grounded in Christianity as he is
Okay.
now. So it was really my mom that was pushing that, and definitely my stepfather's influence that would have assisted there.
Oh, I
So
see.
yeah, I they had their fair share of difficulty dealing with me growing up, man, and I thank them for not giving up.
If you don't mind me, please let me know if it's too much. You just briefly mentioned about stepfather. So, what was your relate? Was there a different dynamic in terms of how you related with your father and your stepfather?
Yeah, because I lived with my stepfather, it was definitely a different dynamic. I didn't live with my dad.
Okay.
I would visit my dad, but I didn't live with my dad. So um, in terms of love and stuff, my stepfather didn't shy away from loving me, caring for me.
Mm.
Um, I'm actually very indebted to my stepfather in my eyes because he was there at all stages throughout my life. So yeah, I'm extremely thankful for him.
Brilliant. And then, so you said that. So, what about with your dad? Was it less of that or the same?
My dad was around a lot more in my secondary school life. It was going on,
Mm.
so it was different in that sense that it wasn't the traditional type of family that you would have, where it's like a nuclear family with the mother and father
Yeah.
and the child involved. It was different in that sense. But just say that to say it wasn't a case where I was raised by like a single mom. I still had my stepfather there to
Understand.
support and stuff. So
Yeah.
thankful for that for sure.
That is a lot to be thankful for, and it leads me to the next question. What would you say you've learned from? I'm guessing you had more of a active relationship with your stepfather because you live in the same house. What would you
Yeah.
say you've learned from that experience, that relationship you still have with your stepdad? But all through those years, what would you say you've taken away key values that's helping you right now as a father?
Well, the important thing is that regardless of differences, because families have differences at any given
Mm,
time. So regardless of differences, I can say that my stepfather was always there. And I try to take that to my personal life. Not that I have any differences with my son. My son is only a year. He'll be a year and 9 months on Wednesday. So not that I have any differences with my son at his young age,
yeah,
even though he's starting to enter like that tantrum stage that he's trying to go into. But not that I have any differences with my son at this point, but I think that it's essential for me, regardless of how I feel, irrespective of how I feel, to always be present, to always be there, to always be supportive, to always be the father figure that my son would need in his life because I am his father. So it's important for me to actually always be there. And that is definitely something I will take away from what my stepfather has been for me.
okay. And this is something I probably, I think it relates to now and even in the future. This is another question that can go different angles. What would you say manhood is? The terminology or being a man. What does that mean or look like to you?
When I hear manhood, honestly, it makes me think of responsibility. So
Right.
we all have responsibilities as men to uphold. Um, the word would point out a number of responsibilities that we have as the head of the household, the leader of the household, and that isn't to be taken lightly. And that isn't to be taken as a dictatorship either, because we know that the greatest leaders follow. So we have to, you know, love our wives, our children, if we have children. Um, some of us are living alone in a house. You're still the head of that household, obviously,
Yeah.
and you have to treat that household as God would have you to treat that household. So, I think when I think manhood, I think responsibility and living up to responsibility and what is necessary for you to provide to, and that people always think of finances when the word provide is stated, but it's not only provision from a financial perspective. There's emotional support, there's um physical support. There's assistance wherever it is needed in the home. It's definitely not only financial, even though I think that you should also be some form of a financial support, even if it is
Yeah.
that you're I don't know, doing something that assists your wife in acquiring the finances. I think that every relationship is different. So what works for my relationship, my wife might carry out the garbage and I might put on an apron and cook. That doesn't mean that it's going to be the same thing for your relationship.
Mm,
So you have to just find what works well for your relationship. And you have to be a man in literally owning that. So don't feel a way about putting on an apron and cooking because at the end of the day, you have responsibilities. You know what works for your household. So anything manhood, I think of responsibilities and how we are supposed to just fulfill our end of the bargain, yeah, as the leaders of that household and be responsible for our families.
I appreciate that. And I think it's an amazing perspective that you kind of given in terms of the example you gave with the apron. Because I think
Yeah,
so many, and I've often found this where men attach their value on terms of financial position. That I'm
yeah,
more of a man if I can provide financially for her. But
yeah.
let's take it even further back to the stage that you were in before you even went to university, where you were single. What would you say to the men that are grown or even younger that are single and still trying to find themselves? What would you advise if you were to go back to advise to those single men in terms of how to develop the skills that they need to be the better version of themselves and also prepare themselves for husbandhood, making up words now, being a husband and also being a father in the future?
All right. So when I spoke about manhood just now,
Mm,
I don't want to give you the impression that I think that responsibility starts from being a husband. A
Yeah,
responsibility starts way before being a husband. All
absolutely.
throughout your stages of growing up, you have to be responsible because essentially it's fashioning you into the man that you're becoming. Yeah.
Hmm.
So when we talk about before I was married and being single, to those that are out there now that are single, you have a responsibility now as well. And I would say very, very earnestly to make sure that you pay attention to what the Word of God is saying. Um, that singles are people growing up, train up a child in the way it should grow, and when it's old, it shall not depart from it.
Absolutely.
There are certain things that you would have now, and this is not only as children in the babe stages, but also children of Christ. Like you could be a child of God, and now become a child of God, and you're not necessarily a child. You might become a child of God at 16 years old, 21 years old. You
Hmm.
can train your mind from that age so that when you become older in your faith, you wouldn't depart from the very fundamentals that you had when you became a child of God. Yeah. So
Absolutely.
I think that we have to be responsible enough to take ownership of that as singles, as married people, whatever the case is. But I think we need to, as singles. So let me say we. I think singles need to understand what the word is saying or outlining for them as responsibility, as what they're supposed to do, what they're supposed to maintain, the lifestyles that they're supposed to live. I think once you have a good grasp on that, you're well on your way.
And it leads perfectly into this now because I want to, because it's for me, the journey to fatherhood, the podcast, as I said earlier before we started a recording, the journey to fatherhood is for me a way to not only help me, it started off with a selfish reason because I felt a lot of times
Pick the
women
truth,
have
shame
so,
the devil.
listen, I'll be honest, I was like,
Yeah,
a lot of women have um, um, group chats or programs, workshops where how to be a great independent woman, how to be a great woman, how to be a great mother, and all of those things. And I found that we don't have as many for men. It's
yeah,
more or less tradition tends to be like, okay, when you grow up, okay, now here's responsibility. Now be a man, be a father, provide, and all of that. And I think it's failing us. So this podcast started for me, literally my journey to fatherhood whilst I'm gaining all these things, listen, I've had people come talk about finances, I've had people talk about relationships, patience, and things like that. And you've covered all of that together. Now, what I want to ask then is this. So, you completed a journey from singleness, being dating a relationship, marriage, and now fatherhood. What would you say how would you say in terms of how would you encourage people that are either one part of that stage or the other in terms of making sure that they see the end goal, even if they don't end up marrying? How would you
yeah.
encourage someone in going through those stages still?
All right. So it's important for us, first of all, not to put any of society's ideas of what these timelines on these goals are for our lives.
I see.
Many people have this thing about, I must be married by this time, I must be married by that time, I must have kids by the age of 26, and I must be married
Mm,
by the age of 24. And if I don't have a house by the age of 28, then I'm a failure, and I have to do all these things before I reach 30. And, I must be living on my own, providing for myself out of my parents' house. Let's stop that now, because society can't put timelines on your success. Because you see someone else with it doesn't mean that it is a case where you have to have it as well by that time. I saw someone put up a status recently that said everybody talking about getting married by 26 and moving out and having their own house, and Jesus still lives with his father after all these years. So please leave me alone. Yeah. And what is even more interesting is that the word says, in my father's house. This is him talking to us. In my father's house.
guys, go biblical.
Basically, there's room. right? If there was not, I would have said
You've
so.
studied this.
My man is telling you, my God is telling you, I live with my father and I'm inviting you to come and live with me. Yeah. They got room in here for all of us. Yeah. And and this is God. So I feel like don't let society tell you and tell you, man, listen, you have to be out of your parents' house by this amount of time. Yes, it's good to have goals for your life. Yes, it's good to accomplish those goals, and but don't let society's idea and concept of what your life is supposed to be cause you any anxiety to actually living your life successfully as to how it is. That's first and foremost for me, because I think we get distracted by that a lot. And if I'm being honest, Shani, I'm trying to remember the question
The
because I
question
feel like
was, what would be your advice for people that are still going through that stage? Bear in mind, you've gone through that stage already.
right. Okay, so for people that are still going through that stage, I definitely started right then. I would like
Mm.
to say, um, don't allow society to fashion you into being who they want you to be or who they believe you should be. You are not a failure. I think
Mm.
that a lot of us want the success and we want it now. And as a result, we shouldn't be praying for success. We should be praying for patience because we are missing the mark. A lot of us don't understand the blessing when we even get them. I remember in the same word because I have to refer to the word. That's why I know. That's why I stand on.
Yeah,
So
foundation.
um, in the same word, I remember when I think it was the Israelites that were going away from when Moses parted the Red Sea. Everybody went through.
Yeah.
Red Sea came back, and they were in I didn't just read the story, so I'm trying to remember it.
They started
They were in
complaining.
a
Is the stage of complaining?
yeah, they were in a state now of complaining that, you
You
brought
should
us
have
out
left
here
us
to
back there.
die,
Yeah.
and we hungry and starving. And um, what I found interesting about this is that they're in a position where they've seen directly firsthand the work of God supernaturally,
Mm.
and yet they're complaining about what they believe that they lack at this point in time and accusing God of bringing them out there to die. Now they're praying, begging for food to eat, right?
Yep.
And at that point, manna comes down from the sky, and it's called manna because they named it manna. And if you look up the meaning of the word manna, it means what is it? So they were not sure what it was,
Mm.
yet they understood after that it was food that was being provided and they ate it. What that says to me is that in that period of time where they were telling God, they need food, begging for food, when it was provided, they asked, what is it? They didn't even notice the blessing when they got the blessing.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's crazy to me. Like, you were praying for this, God provided it for you. And
Mm.
at the same time, though you are starving, meaning that you are ready for this blessing in your eyes, you didn't recognize it when God gave it to you. And I think that a lot of people out there are praying for things that they're not ready for. So realistically, make sure that you're ready for it. That's my encouragement to you. Make sure that you're ready for it before you actually think that you can receive it. Because when you receive it, you won't know what to do with it because you don't know what it is. As the
Wow.
case with a lot of us for love. We out there praying for love, but we ain't ready for love.
Ooh. Say that one more time. Ooh.
Yeah, we out there praying for love, but we ain't ready for love, man.
That's powerful. I think I love the fact that you mentioned the pressure we put on ourselves because even myself, I have to remind myself not to operate at those stages. As
Yeah,
much as I tell myself, okay, I need to work. Where's the garden of Eden God has placed me in to put work on purpose before you bring someone in? I sometimes get lost in, of course, age. I should be doing this by this time. Realistically, I should be doing this, and that. But it's important what you said in terms of, like, I wrote it down, not allowing societal pressures and the timelines they set to cause us to be
yeah,
anxious.
it's
And
true.
that is so important because I think even now with social media, there's so much pressure on. Are you really a man if you haven't done this by this time? If you're not here by this time, what are you? Are you a bum? Are you serious? What's going on?
Yeah,
And I think our men are getting hit by it. I know it's also happening for the women, but the men don't talk about it enough because we just feel like
it's true.
confirm it. let's just firm, okay, this is what it should be. And there's so much power in just understanding that it's societal timelines and precious. And boy, you were preaching there. How can you say God says in my father's, Christ said in my father's house? I've never heard anyone use that way, but it's 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 reassuring,
Yeah,
and it's giving me a new perspective because as much as I know what I shouldn't allow myself to worry about, sometimes it still creeps in. And when you're talking about getting married at 16, I was like, is this guy trying to at me? Is he sending
yeah.
shots to me? Because I was 26, and I was like, where are you going with this? Where are you going with
Yeah.
this? But it's 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 the truth. We put so
Yeah.
much pressure on ourselves, and like you said, sometimes the blessing comes, but we're not even ready for it.
Yep, we are.
But I
We're
want to know
essentially.
what now. I just like one thing I really want us to get into, because even similar to what you talked about, when a blessing's there, we don't know how to manage it or handle it. I want to, in the few moments that we have left, what would you say is making your relationship with your wife work to the point where you've been 4 years married, if I'm correct, or mm,
Actually, it's 5 now. It was 5 January 21st.
January 21st. So it's
Yeah,
5 years married and a son that is 1 year and 9 months in on Wednesday. So
yeah.
what has made it work for you two?
I think that for us, we've we've been our true authentic selves from the beginning. Um,
Mm,
I know that, you know, I for most of this, you can see that I'm a fairly relaxed, chill guy, but
yeah,
I could also be a very big goofball at times. And by at times, I mean a lot of times.
yeah.
So, fortunately, my wife can also be a very big goofball at other times. But
Okay.
we have been able to do that together, and I think we love that quirkiness, that weird sort of personality that we both have, and
Relaxed. Yeah.
yeah, we were able to be fixated on our Christian beliefs.
Hmm.
Obviously, being Christians ourselves, we were able to then just build on a foundation. I think a lot of people um, who are married but worldly, don't get me wrong, people in the church have issues as well with their marriage. But
Mm,
I think that for me, at least in my mind, I am fortunate to have married someone that shares my belief in God and also
yeah.
the principles that we have. Because while we keep the channels of communication open, they're not only channels of communication amongst ourselves, but also with God. So having that opportunity to, freely converse with my wife about anything, and I
Mm,
mean anything. If a female has a crush on me, or a male
mm.
has a crush on my wife, and even though we nip it in the bud with whatever is going on, not saying this is the case because I can't actually think of this
No, no, no.
situation
It's
happening before,
steps for
but
people.
even though we'll nip it in the bud with whatever is going on with that person, we'll also discuss it with one another. It's not a case where um, someone would have a crush on one of us and then we keep it to ourselves. It's like, yo, so the channels of
Communicate.
communication have to be wide open. We don't
Mm,
leave any room at all for the enemy just to put, his toe in the door, because we don't want to give him any leeway. So
mm.
anything that could disrupt us, we talk about it outright. It is a case where we have that discussion. I think that I owe it to her. She believes that she owes it to me as well. And yeah, I think that also, sorry, the point I was making regarding us being people of God is that we have rules to live by. We have a guideline to live by that the word sets out for a husband and a wife.
Yeah.
So as a result, we are better able to follow those things in order for us to be better um, husband and wife to each other. So
Okay.
I think that plays a very crucial role. It's extremely difficult for those who do not, well, sorry, don't let me speak for them. I would find it extremely difficult if I didn't have those rules to live by.
Yeah.
So having those rules to live by, I I definitely think it serves better in our stead to keeping us well glued together. spending the quality time, understanding her love languages, she understanding my love languages. And notice that I said jizz with an S and ES, sorry, an S, because at the end of the day, it's more than one.
Yeah.
And yeah, we understand them, and we work towards giving each other what the other person needs. I think that that is how it works and should work for marriages.
I love that, and I love the fact that the communication is so key, and
Yep.
a lot of people don't understand the importance of communication. Like you mentioned, in terms of transparency, even when you nip something in the bud, being and taking away the pride and ego to still share that. So that's what's powerful, and honestly, I respect you for that. One question I have though is, what is the plan, or what's your vision for the next 20 years or 21 years of your son? I know he's going to be turning 1 year and 9 months by next week. What's it going to look like? Because I'm interested. Are we going down the basketball route? Are we going to the
I
tracks?
laughed just now because in my mind I said NBA.
I love it.
That's legit what I just said. My wife just got home, so I had to look
Oh,
over at her.
hello.
Right? Because obviously it would be whatever he wants to be.
Good answer.
Yes, there would be some coercing, but
Yeah.
there would be no forcing. I would definitely be pushing the basketball route at him. If it's something that he takes up, which I'll be very enthused about,
Yeah.
then I'll be happy. But if it's a case where he's not interested in it, I definitely won't be forcing him into it. But my idea for my son, or my vision and goal for my son, is to make sure that I impart with him the knowledge and the skills that he needs
Mm.
um, to traverse life and its challenges. So making sure that he has a good godly foundation, and in having a good godly foundation, I don't only mean educating him about God, but making sure that he sees a godly example in myself and my wife as we live our lives,
Absolutely.
so that he can have something to live by. I also believe that when it comes to management of certain things, teaching him responsibility from a young age. As I said, I think that that's the premise on which man rests,
Yeah.
broad premise. But I need to teach him certain things from his young age, whether it be managing finances, managing his health. I need to teach him that from a young age, because those things are going to carry through his entire way of life. I actually have been very active in how he's been learning, meaning, well, my wife more so than I, but I've been very active in teaching him. I marvel at the fact that at this young age, he knows his alphabet. He can tell you any letter if you write it down.
Less than
Um,
2 years old. You know. Wow. Okay.
yeah, entire alphabet,
Good.
all the numbers. He can count from 1 to 20 by himself. He would struggle with certain things. He would struggle with saying like the letter J, but if he is told go and bring the J, because he has enough letters, just
Mm.
all the letters that are around. So if he's told go and bring the J, he would go and come back with the letter J. So he knows the letters. He knows the numbers. He would do the same thing, and he's even knowledgeable of them in Spanish. So if I tell him, "What is this?" and I hold up the number one, he will say "uno." Like, so
Wow. You're doing.
I think that he
He's
needs
far
to be able
advanced.
to, yeah, to learn from this young age, and I've been
Yeah.
very impressed by the way he's been learning. And trust me, there's very little, if anything, that makes me proud to that extent,
I
where
can see the smile.
see, yeah, and you see how active he is in learning, how proud he is himself in learning. And even when I get home on, I divert a bit, but when I get home on evenings, and he runs to me as like the highlight of my day. So yeah, I think that he needs to learn those things from this young age. Actually, I would have learned myself that when a child, a person learns 50% of how they would how they of their life lessons. 50% of the life lessons, or 50% of behavior. I think it was behavior. 50% of behavior between the ages 0 and 2, and I found that remarkable. So it's from this young age that he needs to have it ingrained in him, um, as to who he is, how he is going to interact. So I would push a little basketball. I would also make sure that He's knowledgeable of how to spend his money,
Yeah.
knowledgeable how to save it, how to invest it. I would make sure that there are certain things in place for him that, when he gets older, he will be able to have. So I just think my responsibility is to make sure that his responsibility is lived up to.
Oh, love mindful of your time because I know we're slightly over. I just want to ask you two things. So you mentioned earlier that you and your wife share an account and YouTube page called Lovell Lifestyle. Can you spell that out for the listeners so that they can
Sure.
follow there?
So it is at Lovell Set You Free on Instagram. Lovell Set You Free 2017, is it? At Lovell Set You Free 2017. But the page itself is called Lovell Lifestyle, or the ministry itself is called the Lovell Lifestyle. I'm trying to look for it while I speak so that I don't misguide you.
No, that's
Uh,
okay. We'll also put in the description when you send it over. Just
yeah, and the YouTube page is Lovell Lifestyle.
Lovell Lifestyle.
The Lovell
Uh,
Lifestyle. Yeah, I'll look for that one now as well.
Oh, that's brilliant. And with this, I know that I firstly appreciate your time. I
Yeah,
appreciate
sorry,
your
Lovell
transparency.
Lifestyle. Confirming.
Say that one more time.
It's Lovell Lifestyle on YouTube.
Brilliant. I
Yeah,
just want to say thank you. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate your honesty. I think the honesty and the depth that we've got is amazing. And I just
no
want to
problem
ask,
at all.
what would be one closing thing you'd like the listeners to say? What would be one closing thing you'd like to say to the listeners or watchers?
All right. There was actually something on my mind when I was talking about the manna, because there was another
Responsibility.
revelation I got from that story that I probably would like to leave you with. And yeah, it's really let's try not to be too anxious for things. Yeah. There are times where we are so anxious for things that we essentially, as I said, we are not ready for. The word of God instructs us not to be anxious for nothing. Um, and even though it might seem like people are getting ahead of you, it's really not measured by their skill. It's your life is measured by your skill, not theirs. So even though it might seem like people are getting ahead of you, you
Mm,
shouldn't let it bother you to the extent of um, changing your whole being as a result, because it could affect the way that you yourself are being blessed. So in that same situation, if I'm trying to remember the story, if I knew that God would have wanted me to go down this line, I would have definitely read this story a bit more before I came
it's
on.
absolutely okay.
But Lord, your will and not mine. So I'm trying to
Mm,
remember what the revelation that I got from it was. And I think it was that if we are like the Israelites, who were journeying to the promised land, because that's essentially what they wanted, to get to the promised land. And I believe when they were, is I think it's when they were partaking in that manna, um, they were rejoicing because God gave them exactly what they wanted, short term. God gave them the manna. They were
yeah.
happy after they realized it was the food and stuff and they were eating it. They were rejoicing in that. But it was in that moment that the Lord said that those that were there would not inherit the promised land, if I
Absolutely.
remember
No,
correctly,
yeah,
that they
that
would not inherit
generation.
the promised land.
Hmm.
So, what I found interesting about that is that they were anxious to inherit the promised land. Obviously, they want to get away, but they prayed for something in the short term, um, meaning the manna, that they didn't recognize what it was in the first place. They
Hmm.
prayed for something in the short term, and while they were given it, they were rejoicing. And in that moment of rejoicing is when the Lord said they would not get what they wanted long term. So it's like I got exactly what I prayed for, but
Yeah,
now what I really needed,
it's the
so I
need.
got what I wanted, but
What is
not what I
what?
needed, if you
Yeah.
get me.
Hmm.
So because they were so anxious, they didn't inherit what they actually needed, but they just got what they wanted. And I think many of us out there are in positions where we are praying for something to happen so fast and so now, instead of praying for patience, which is actually what you need. Um, but yeah, instead of praying for the patience, and as a result, you are missing out on what you would get in the long term, which is the land flowing with milk and honey. Instead of you're giving up the 5 course meal for the snack. That is exactly what
Big
you are doing.
stretch. Yeah.
You're rejoicing over the fact that you prayed and got your snack, but really and truly, God wanted for you a 5 course meal. So you're pushing for this snack when God has for you a 5 course meal. So don't be anxious. Just, accept that God has your best interest at heart and that He would provide it to you in the right time. Because in the moment that they were rejoicing is the very moment that they didn't wait on God for what could have been. And they got what they wanted now. So yeah, that'll be my takeaway.
Listen, you've been not only sharing, but you've been preaching and ministering all through. I love it. And I once again cannot say thank you enough. And guys, for all of you listening, please make sure you also, I'll put in the description, but make sure you go follow him on Instagram. His Instagram handle is MAINE90, MAINE90, Maine90. And there you also see the link in the description section. You see the link to the YouTube channel he was referring to. So please make sure you go there.
Lovell Lifestyle page, actually, because now I think about it, I think my page is private, so you might be able to see it, but I'm not sure if they'll be able to see it. But
that's okay.
Yeah,
but definitely Lovell Lifestyle, Lovell Lifestyle on YouTube. They have over 368 subscribers. Let's make sure we go there and listen to it, because I'm seeing some. I love it. Whilst you were talking now, I was having a look. You've got one that says the male brain. One of those videos that says the male brain, the male perspective before and after marriage. And that's similar to what we talked about. And it seems like you had some guests on it. So let's really have this, because I want it not just to be one platform that this conversation is happening. I want us to have a regular conversation on men strengthening each other. And I'll definitely be listening to that. And I may have some questions for you when I finish watching yours.
Sure.
But
you know where to find me, man.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I know we're a bit over time, but I appreciate your time.
I appreciate you having me, man, Shani. Thank you very much. I appreciate the work you're doing as well.
Thank you very much.
Good stuff. Great. Encouraging, man.
Thanks.